Guys.
Hi, I'm Sarah.
Hi, I'm Cooper.
Hi, I'm
Hey,
Alex.
oh, that's
Hey, I'm
good.
Morales.
Okay, so hey guys, my name is Layla, and today I'm going to be talking to you about a policy change regarding physical activity in the workplace. The reason I decided to advocate for a policy change requiring free time for physical activity at work is because of experiences I have had at my workplace. I work at USC's Office of Research and Grant Development. As a part-time employee and student, I do not have to sit at my desk all week, unlike my fellow coworkers, Beth and Richard. As full-time employees, Beth and Richard must sit hunched over at their desks for hours, working on grants for the National Science Foundation and National Institutes of Health, not having any free time to stretch their legs or walk around the block. Over the years I've worked with them, I have heard them discuss back pain, increased fatigue, and stiffness of muscles. Recently, both Beth and Richard were given standing desks to work at, and this small improvement has tremendously helped their health concerns. Though a great solution for combating sedentary work conditions, not every employer offers their employees standing desks or even free time to stretch their arms and legs. This is ultimately what led me to pursue research about the policies that are currently in place in South Carolina regarding physical activity. And to my surprise, I found that there was nothing. In the United States, there currently is no universal policy that all employers must adhere by regarding free time for employees to participate in physical activity. I would like to propose a policy that requires employers in South Carolina to allow full-time sedentary employees at least 30 minutes of free time for physical activity per day at work. There are many reasons why employers should consider incorporating free time into their employees' schedules, all of which would ultimately benefit the company. As stated in the Worksite Physical Activity article published by the CDC, worksite wellness programs can improve morale among employees, increase productivity at work, and reduce absenteeism. Additionally, physical activity can reduce the occurrence of several diseases like diabetes, heart disease, and even cancer. These benefits that the employers would receive would ultimately help the company to become more productive and profitable. Additionally, other countries around the world, specifically in Europe, have already incorporated physical activity in the workplace, and the results prove that there is a benefit to this. In the article, Promoting Health-Enhancing Physical Activity in Europe, Current State of Surveillance Policy Development and Implementation, we can explore how other countries have successfully enacted the policy change. 12 European countries have incorporated physical activity into the work schedules of their citizens. Many companies and businesses have also mentioned that they use incentive programs to encourage their employees to maintain a healthy lifestyle. This allows the employees to live a healthier and longer life, but it also helps businesses to become more productive. Now, I want to bring back something that I mentioned earlier, maintaining a healthy lifestyle. Unfortunately, this is something that Americans, especially South Carolinians, are falling behind in. In the article, South Carolina State Nutrition, Physical Activity, and Obesity Profile, published by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, it was stated that 35% of adults in South Carolina are overweight and 32% of adults are considered obese. Additionally, 49% of adults in South Carolina participate in 150 minutes of moderate intensity physical activity every week. These numbers are staggering, and it allows you to truly realize the severity of the problem. A problem that could be dampened if we were to allow sedentary employees a chance to exercise while at work. Now, you may be wondering what kinds of facilities would employees need? Well, there are quite a few options, and in the journal article, association of environmental factors to meeting physical activity recommendations in 2 South Carolina counties, we explore a few of them. It has been shown that employers who provide facilities like locker rooms, walking paths, and small gyms have healthier employees. Also, encouraging sport teams while at work has been shown to promote positive health outcomes among the employees. The benefits of allowing physical activity in the workplace is something that I hope our South Carolina state legislators can see. I strongly encourage them to look into adopting a policy that encourages required free time for sedentary employees to participate in physical activity. Ultimately, I believe that South Carolinians would greatly benefit from this policy change. The benefits of increasing workplace productivity and morale among employees is something that both the employer and employee can benefit from. Encouraging physical activity while at work helps to combat a number of diseases and can lead to less workplace absenteeism, another instance of a benefit for both the employer and the employee. These positive health outcomes, as well as the benefits that employers receive from having healthy employees, could become a reality for many businesses in South Carolina. With the implementation of this proposed policy, South Carolinians may be able to live a happier and healthier life. Thank you for listening, and at this time, I would now like to answer any questions.
If a company doesn't have like a lot of funds to implement some of these programs, what would you say would be the cheapest way to just let the employees be more active?
Yeah, so that's a really good point that you brought up. And I know, for instance, where I work and a lot of other companies, they're in downtown areas. So they just have city blocks to work at, like that they work on and stuff. And I know at USC, they actually have an initiative where during the lunch break, they encourage the employees to either walk around the city blocks or just to walk around the hallways just to get up and stretch their legs. So if companies were to just promote the free time, I think that the facilities, like even though they may not have the necessary funds to provide gyms or to put locker rooms into, the company bathroom, like there are ways that you can get your employees up and moving without having to, buy necessary equipment. So yeah, there are other solutions besides just having gyms and putting facilities like that.
Thank you. That was a good answer.
You brought up your boss, the people you work with, and how, they complain about not getting free time. Have you spoken to like your boss about trying to implement programs, or you mentioned before that USC has a policy where they let them have active time. So do they ever like use that?
Yeah, so definitely more recently, I've seen a big shift in just like the work environment that I work at. USC has started a healthy initiatives program where a lot of the employees that work in the office setting, they strongly encourage them to get up and start moving, because sitting at the desk, like it really does put a strain on you. Like, I only work 4 hours a day when I go to work. But even then, sitting there for 4 hours, you can feel the fatigue of your muscles and everything. So I'm not sure exactly how widespread this initiative is at USC, but I've definitely seen an increase in the number of employees that have started to like get up and start moving, especially around the office.
Thanks.
If you don't mind, I have a question. Do you think having these added breaks for increased fitness might have a negative outcome on productivity with less time focused on work?
Yeah, so I understand what you mean there. because a lot of people think that it's, going to be the most productive, or it's going to be in the best interest of the company to have, obviously the most hours of work available, because, the more you work, the more money the company gets, the more profitable it is, and etc. But a lot of the studies that I found showed that even though they were having their employees sit down for a longer period of time without having any breaks to like get up and move, they weren't getting as much work done as the employees that were given the time off. So like having that mental break, having that break just to like get up and stretch your legs, walk around the block, it actually does increase the productivity of the employees that are working in the environment where they had previously been sedentary. So yeah, I know what you mean, because I was thinking the same thing when I was researching, but actually it's the opposite. So.
Okay, well, thank you for your answer.
Do you think that some companies might try to just take away from employees' lunch breaks to implement the exercise period?
Yeah, so that was actually another thing that I was researching throughout the articles. And some employers were just saying, oh, use your lunch break as time to get in your physical activity. But again, they saw that they weren't being as productive when they weren't given that amount of time just to like regroup during their lunch break, and then also have time to take another additional break for exercising. So the policy change would probably have to specify specifically, do not incorporate this into the lunch schedule, or add additional time to the person's lunch schedule so that they may have time to go and exercise and spread their, stretch their arms and legs. But yeah, that is something that needs to be specified in the policy, because if not, then organizations and companies might want their employees just to use their lunch break for that time. Yeah, good question.
So this is like an era where like employee wages and rights are being fought for constantly, definitely. Do you think exercise is like a more important kind of policy change to endeavor instead of like wage increases or insurance benefits?
Well, well, I definitely don't think that exercise should take precedence over, increasing, employees' wages, because that's more towards their livelihood, and that's definitely not as much, well, it is for their standard of living, but this policy change is definitely geared towards health outcomes. Like, I'm a public health major, so to me, this is like, I can see how health outcomes really can be impacted by having, allocated time set aside in your work schedule, because people that work from 9 to 5, they usually come home and they're tired, and they're not wanting to go out and go on that 30-minute run, or they're not wanting to go out, to go to a Zumba class or a yoga class, because the next day they have to wake up early and do it all over again. So this is more just for setting aside time in people's schedules so that we can decrease those numbers of the obesity rates in South Carolina and America, and so that we can decrease the levels of obesity and heart disease and diabetes, but also still have a productive workday. But just to get back to your question, no, it doesn't necessarily, in my opinion, have, I think that wages is just as important as physical activity, because that is definitely impacting the person's livelihood, but they're just different. Sectors of the workplace environment.
That's a great answer. Thank you.
Any more questions? No? Okay, thank you guys for listening.
No problem.
You did really good. Next.
Okay. Hi, my name is Sarah Schweiss. I'd like to first start out by thanking you guys for listening today, and I would also like to ask for your permission to record this conversation. Thank you.
All good.
Thanks.
Good with me.
I would like to move forward with a story. In 32 years, the year will be 2050. You are now in your early 50s. Your family goes to the beach every year, and now that you have a child in college, they are meeting you on their fall break. You have been looking forward to this for a while. You drove 3 hours to your favorite traditional beach location. You drag your chairs, your cooler, your fishing rod, and your beach bag down to the beach until you're stopped by caution tape that the beach side is closed. There is way too much plastic pollution in the ocean. By 2050, it is predicted that there will be more plastic in the ocean than fish. This is due to Americans using more than 500 million straws every single day. For a Strawless Ocean is a large internet movement releasing those facts and asking people to take action against plastic pollution, and this starts with the straw. I searched through many online databases to retrieve credible information on plastic pollution, and extremely knowledgeable information came out of it. The article from Science Says, Amounts of Straws, Plastic Pollution is Huge, gave amazing statistics. Scientists estimated that over a 5-year span cleanup, there was nearly 7.5 million plastic straws lying around just the shorelines in America. This does not account for everything else already in the ocean. This is just what has been washed up. The scientists explained that the seabirds can only have 8% of their body weight be plastic. If you think about it, this is really sad because that is equivalent to a woman having 2 babies in her stomach. That is just one example of a sea animal being affected by the plastic pollution. Like I said before, there are many internet movements pushing for this cause, but these are subtle things. There are more drastic measures being taken. For example, the magazine Fast Company put out an article called "Here Are the Cities That Have Banned Plastic Straws So Far." And this shows that cities, food chains, airlines, universities, and hotels have all started to ban plastic straws. For example, Alaska Airlines eliminated the use of all their plastic straws. Bon Appetit, which is a large food service company, got rid of all plastic straws in all 1,000 of its cafes. This is huge implementation. The Vice President of Plastics for the American Chemistry Council wants to take it farther and create an elimination plan. He wants to create a way to fix what has already been damaged. He says that the solution to the problem is to create a system that captures land-based waste and invest in infrastructure to take the plastic and turn it into something different that won't affect the ocean. So, what I'm asking for is for more than just a few cities to put these policies in place. We need all cities, since it's already flourishing in the ones it has been implemented in, to encourage this policy. The Earth Day Network says that as of May of 2016, that in San Francisco, California, the Board of Supervisors introduced new legislation that would ban the distribution of plastic straws and some other non-biodegradable items. This is what needs to happen in every city across the United States. Here in South Carolina, for example, we have decided to prohibit most single-use plastic bags, foam food containers, and more. But most is the key word. Instead, we need to remove all plastic straws out of restaurants and organizations. Most is not enough. Most won't save the ocean's pollution. So, what am I advocating for? I'm advocating for a change in policy, and this is how I'm going to do it. I want you guys to do it too. Post on social media to show local governments to hashtag stop sucking on straws. The national hashtag to end plastic straws put on by For a Strawless Ocean, which is the movement I was talking about earlier, is to tell your waiter to stop offering straws to their customers. They want you to pass on this hashtag and to tell them so they can tell their customers the education and statistics that I just gave you. Imagine if every restaurant across the United States, the waiters weren't offering straws and they were telling people to not buy them, to not buy plastic products, to not include them in organizations. This would go so far. Also go large. You need to go to your local organizations and inform them what harm is happening. Lastly, if we speak and we persist, the local governments will listen. It is working in some cities and some organizations, but we need to not hit some, we need to hit them all. We need to make the United States a place with less plastic and to encourage the flourishing oceans that are filled with life and not the instruments that are killing the life. I want a policy in place across all the local governments in the United States. I want everyone to be on this same page, fighting for the same battle that is so prevalent. Imagine the reduction in number if this policy was in place. We are currently, like I said earlier, using over 500 million straws per day. What would happen if a policy was in place all across the United States that eliminated the use of these straws? That number would go down by at least 50%. Then, by 2050, our oceans would be clean and our animals and fish would be alive. I'm asking the local governments to work together and to make this happen, and I need your help. I would like to end this by thanking everyone for listening today and taking interest in this policy change. I would like to now open the floor to any questions and to open discussion.
I don't have a question as much as a statement, but I like how you focused on local government. It's much easier to get stuff like this passed level instead of going to Congress, because it would be much harder.
I think that it's really important to do it locally because most of the research I did, they are doing it locally. Like it's been in cities, most like companies rather than going if we do it step by step.
Right.
I have a question. Do you think it might be more effective to appeal to international? Because pollution is essentially an international problem, not like you know what I mean.
Yeah, and I think that also like goes hand in hand in like what I was saying earlier, like by starting small. But in the research I did, I just looked mainly United States just to do like local governments. But there are a lot of things going on internationally, like the same movements that I was talking about. A lot of that is already going on internationally too, which is really cool. And like I said, like not just like our airlines, but airlines that go abroad, like are cutting it out. I should have included more of that, but that's a really good point because it does affect the whole world and not just our area.
All right, thank you.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So, sure you've heard of the Starbucks. They're going to be transitioning into the no straws phase. Company. But how do you think that would speed up the whole process of having of straw clean and if other companies pick up the same movement?
I think Starbucks had a great idea by implementing the no straw idea, but there's actually been a lot of controversy with that because apparently they use more plastic to make the strawless lid than plastic straws affect. So that's been like a huge thing going on. So I think that I like also included that in my speech a little bit, that like plastic straws is like the first step because I think it's the easiest thing to be like, oh, please don't give me a straw, like something at the table. But like, it isn't just the straws that are affecting it. It's like all the plastic in general. So Starbucks did like a good job of like kind of bringing awareness to the fact that we need to stop straws. And so hopefully other companies will like take their same idea of cutting out straws, but like not implementing something that might be more harmful because of it. But that's a really good point.
Okay, yeah. Thank you.
Of course.
Just to play devil's advocate, I saw some people the straw ban because those with disabilities are relying on straws to drink. How would best we go about?
I'm so sorry. You broke up that entire time. Is there any way you could repeat that?
Oh my god, I'm so sorry.
No, it's not your fault. I just couldn't hear it.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
I saw on social media that some are worried that those with disabilities
With disabilities?
Yeah, they rely on straws.
Yes. So I read that too. I included that in my first one because I had no idea that was even a thing that people with disabilities couldn't drink out of regular. They need plastic straws. And so I think that that's definitely like a whole nother story. And like if they in a restaurant like need a straw, if there's something that's going along. But a person, when I did research, they suggested they bring their own straws. So like instead of a plastic straw, like you can have a metal straw or something. I know they sell a lot of drinks, like especially Starbucks, they have like a lot of those drinks that have their straws already included. I've had one forever. So I think that was the best solution is instead of doing plastic to just bring your own. And so the restaurant doesn't have to provide it for you. But that's a really good point.
Thanks.
Sorry, I couldn't hear you before.
It's fine.
So I know about how like local government are like banning stronger now. I'm from Hilton Head, which I think is great. It's more like coastal towns or is it more?
It definitely is more coastal towns. When I did research, it's a lot of things in like California, and like it said in South Carolina, there's a lot, and in Florida. And most of the people advocating it are the people in the coastal towns. But that's definitely like, I think that's the issue that we need to like expand, is that like it's not just the people, like those are the people I think who have the most passion about it because they're witnessing that's like where they live, and they hear the most about it. But we need the places that maybe don't see a lot of water, that like aren't on the coast, to like also be on the same page, even though like it's not as relevant to them.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you.
Of course. Does anyone else have any more questions? Okay, thank you so much.
All right, I think this is my time. All right, so my name is Kubriusko. I'm talking about tax benefit. We're all in the same situation. We've all decided to attend the same university, pay the same tuition, give or take some scholarships, and we will all have student loan debt. The burden to pay it will either fall on you or your parents or both. The policy change I would like to see is for the addition of a tax benefit for employers that helps ease student loan debt for their employees. I'm seeking this change from the United States Congress, who have the power and the magnitude to undertake this policy. This is a change that would not only benefit the economy, but would benefit the citizens who choose to seek higher education and are eligible to receive debt relief. I decided to choose this tax benefit because I am an accounting major who will soon graduate and have to start paying off student loan debt. This topic applies to both my professional and my personal life, and the issue of student debt worries me daily. I felt my passion and expertise has allowed me to speak on this topic in depth. There's a similar tax benefit that is already written into the tax code, and Congress can use this as a baseline to form this new tax benefit. The similar tax benefit is 401k contributions. Employees put away money for their pensions each year, and usually it's a percentage of their paychecks. An employer sometimes will have matching programs where they will match the contributions you make up to a certain percentage. To incentivize companies into contributing, employees receive a dollar for dollar tax deduction for matching 401k contributions. This means if a company contributes $3,000 a year towards your pension, they can deduct $3,000 off their taxable income. This has created positive impacts in business, lowering recruiting costs and cutting down on turnover at companies that have established this program, according to a Boston College research study. But participation will continue to be an issue. The New Hampshire Review states that 1.27 trillion of future debt will be added in the next decade, according to estimates by the Federal Reserve. The average student loan debt among 2017 graduates is $40,000. So contributing to your 401k might not be the top priority when you have a massive amount of debt. In fact, according to a noted 401k advisor, Alan Robertson, companies are not having the best results when using automatic enrollment into these 401k programs. More people would rather help themselves out of debt than plan for their retirement, meaning that these 401k matching programs are not used to the fullest extent to the employees that it's offered for. Instead, by using a program that helps relieve debt for employees, you can have vastly better results in terms of participation. A specific company, Millennium Trust, has noted that 20% of their young professionals are participating in the loan repayment program, which is a much larger percentage than young adults contributing to their 401ks, according to Robert Steyer, who's a longtime pensions and investments reporter. Right now, these payments by employers to employees' debt are considered taxable income to the employer. In layman's terms, this means that the higher taxable income you have, the higher taxes you have to pay. Companies do not want to pay higher taxes, and most larger companies will do anything to cut costs to appeal to stockholders and investors. Because of this, only 4% of eligible companies are offering this package, according to a survey of 3,500 HR professionals performed by the Society for Human Resource Management. This needs to be fully tax deductible for the employer, removing whatever their contributions are from their taxable income. This would increase the amount of companies offering a similar package, which would be helping employees get out of this massive amount of debt that they are under. I believe that Congress should want to see this tax benefit initiated, because it would help allow taxpayers to rid themselves of debt and be able to become more active in the economy. The GAO, or the U.S. Government Accountability Office, explains that the more debt a country holds, the less money it's able to put away in savings and reinvest into the nation's economy. And there are plenty of tax laws that allow for reduction of interest rates from year to year, or taking deductions of interest payments off loans. But these laws do not benefit the U.S. taxpayer very much annually, and none of them allow an employer to receive benefits by helping off student loan debt. To conclude, Congress can use similar programs such as the 401k contributions, which are already under current tax laws, and the loan repayment programs that are offered with a small amount of businesses. Congress can take the 401k deduction aspect and the student debt payments and combine it into a new tax law that is fully deductible to the employer and incredibly useful to the employee's past, present, and future financial situations. So contact your local congressman, ask them to push forward any and all legislation that provides tax benefits for employers helping with student loan debt relief, or tell your potential employers in job interviews that you would be very interested in debt relief being offered as a job perk. This could convince management to install these programs even without a government tax backing. Debt has put college graduates into an immense amount of pressure and anxiety, and you have a very short time until these payments begin. You'll need to take all the appropriate measures to ensure that you won't bury yourself in debt before you begin your professional career. I'd be willing to answer any questions about this issue. I know I used a lot of tax terms, and if anybody wants any clarification on any vocab I used, I will answer that as well.
I was about to say, so I'm not an accounting major, and some of that stuff like kind of goes over my head, but I was going to say, how do you appeal to someone like me who's a marketing major who may have student loan debt, but like isn't sure like that there isn't that policy in place or something like that?
The current tax system is incredibly confusing, definitely to someone who doesn't know accounting at all. I would say that there's probably nothing that you can do besides becoming more informed on the issue. The current tax sheet is so tiny and so subjugated that it doesn't let anyone that has no prior knowledge really understand what's going on. I would say just bringing it up with the person that does your taxes or your parents to make sure that they ask them. Just because they kind of make it this way to force you miss out on these opportunities unless you know about them. It's crappy, but it is the way it is.
Perfect. Thank you.
Do you have any like procedures you would use to contact Congress about trying to like fix this law, or is it just kind of more of a general idea?
Could you repeat that? Sorry, it came in a little weird.
Yeah. So do you have any specific ways to petition Congress to try to amend this law to make it more of what, like, do you have any, I don't know, like specific ways you would go about doing that?
Well, they just passed a whole revamping of the tax code last year that actually takes effect this year. So this wouldn't be something that gets amended or changed right now. This is more of a long-term relief, and you pay student loans for quite a while, so it's not something that needs to be handled immediately. As far as trying to get them to amend it right now, it would really be just talking to your congressmen and women that are work for you and trying to get them to change it. It's something that, because congressmen and women have sons and daughters that are going through college as well, and I'm sure that they would want this to be passed. This is something that's kind of universally needed, and this isn't a one-sided issue. There has been tax laws passed in the future or in the past that have been supported by both sides of the aisle. So this isn't something that could get tied up in Congress. This is something that kind of everybody wants.
Okay, thank you.
Question for you real quick. What do you think the benefit is of implementing a policy promoting this instead of, for example, expanding federal tuition assistance programs?
That is a good question. I believe this is a policy that, like I said, is kind of goes across lines as far as in Congress. The problem with federal tuition programs is that it gets so caught up that if Democrats want them, Republicans don't. It's something that isn't really sustainable, and it would cost more money for the government to instill these than giving tax breaks for citizens that need them. And I think I saw that it's estimated that $150 billion worth of taxes aren't paid a year, which is definitely something that they need to approach in the future. And by having a system that allows for deduction of these taxable incomes, you can have more people paying because it would be a lower number that they would be willing to pay, and it would help the economy.
Okay, solid answer. Thank you.
Hi. I think you did a good job explaining that in terms of people that aren't familiar with that, because I'm a public health major and I don't really understand that. But so I'm not really familiar with the whole thing, but is there a policy similar to the one that you're proposing that has been used in other countries or anywhere else?
That's a good question. Other issues that we do, most countries, in fact, provide so much assistance for their students because they want them to receive higher education that once they get out of college, they don't have these massive debt that they have to undertake. So I really didn't find any other system in place in any other country just because we're the only country that charges this exorbitant amount for college.
Okay, thank you.
Do you think that a way to help the student debt is to, not to as much focus on the students, but rather the colleges that are increasing their prices by absurd amounts every year?
That is a good question. I believe you could certainly approach that in public universities like ours, but the issue really lies in these expensive private universities that don't have to answer to governments, that don't have to answer to certainly state or local governments. And these are the ones that are charging these high amounts for colleges, even though we do pay a lot. But if you look at a more private institution, they would charge double or triple. I certainly think that could be a possibility going straight to the colleges for public universities. But as far as private, they're really hamstrung in that sense about trying to change their tax laws because they can't.
Thanks.
Anybody else have any questions? All right, thank you guys.
Okay, hi everyone. My name is Alexandra. Thanks so much for listening today. So many people would be surprised to know that most of the products in their homes were once tested on animals. Products such as makeup, soap, and even food coloring in some foods have been tested on harmless, innocent animals. Some people would be devastated to hear this, as these animals undergo unimaginable pain. These animals cannot speak up for themselves, and laws need to change in order to protect these innocent animals from this cruel process. Since there is currently a law protecting a select type of animals from testing, it must be amended to include all from these experiments. The Animal Welfare Act, or AWA, is a law that was designed to set standards for the obtainment and maintenance of animals in testing facilities. It was originally written in response to labs using stray dogs and cats in experiments, and it mainly protects warm-blooded animals. While this law is a step in the right direction for the protection of animals from testing, only 10% of animals are actually protected, and animals such as birds, mice, and rats are still subjected to testing today. These animals undergo tests that cause irritation and corrosion in their eyes and skin. Some animals even die during or after testing from these inhumane experiments. Animals that are supposed to be protected, such as rabbits, are sometimes used in experiments. These harmful tests must stop. According to the United States Department of Agriculture, the purpose of the AWA is to protect animals from inhumane lab testing, but there are still many loopholes and shortcomings in protecting these animals. Researchers are required to use proper medications to help the animal avoid pain and distress, and are prohibited from using revival surgeries. These surgeries are done if the animal survives and researchers want to use it again for additional experiments. While this is great that the AWA technically protects animals from these horrifying treatments, researchers are legally allowed to practice revival surgeries if deemed necessary for their experiments. Putting an animal's life and comfort in danger for the sake of science is an absolutely terrifying thought, and the United States Congress must put an end to it. According to a Dutch University Research Institute, the WUR, experiments such as those done on cultured human cells and computer models are actually far cheaper and more effective than animal testing, rendering animals in experiments as cruel and unnecessary. By using a computer model, scientists can discover how much of a certain chemical a human cell can tolerate, and then can calculate the effect of a single dosage on the human body. In addition to computer models, scientists can also use cultured human cells and tissue on a microchip slide to see which substances can be tolerated by humans and in what dosage. According to the Humane Society, these tests end up being up to $20,000 cheaper than tests done on animals. Since the federal government spends almost $14.5 billion per year on animal testing, these new methods are revolutionary in lowering the cost of drug and substance testing and their ability to eradicate the need for animals. These are instrumental measures in convincing Congress to amend the AWA to include all animals in its protection against testing. In addition to spending too much money on scientific testing, the United States is behind the times when it comes to giving humane treatment to animals. In 2013, Norway, Israel, India, and some countries in Europe banned all cosmetic animal testing, and companies who disregard this will face punishment such as prison time. However, the United States has been making strides in the right direction. In 2002, California became the first state to ban cosmetic testing on animals when a different test is available, with New Jersey, New York, and Virginia following soon after. As taxpayers, the American people need to push Congress to amend the AWA and to stop using our tax dollars for such inhumane and cruel reasons. Since alternatives such as computer models and cultured human cells have already been discovered and are currently in use, the United States is heading toward a better future. We need this future to happen sooner rather than later. Supporters of animal testing argue that human health needs to be put ahead of animals. They argue that animal research is the best, cheapest, and most effective way to test chemicals and other substances for human consumption. This is far from the truth. Research has proven that animal testing is not only cruel, but outdated and unnecessary. Most animals do not even react the same way to chemicals in the way that humans do. According to the National Anti-Vivisection Society, there is evidence of the failures of animal testing. Experiments such as testing an arthritis medication on monkeys tested safe, but in reality was fatal to humans. Testing a diet drug on animals caused heart damage in humans, even though it was not harmful to the animals. These continue to prove the differences in species between humans and animals. Animal testing has delivered flawed conclusions that continue to be proven reckless and dangerous. Despite this definite proof, animal testing still occurs in vast numbers, as over 25 million animals, including those that are supposed to be protected under the AWA, are still used in testing in the United States today. Because of the danger posed to both animals and humans, testing on animals must be stopped soon. I call you to contact your representatives and urge them to push to amend the Animal Welfare Act and end the cruel act of animal testing soon. Thank you for listening, and at this time I'd like to open up for any questions.
I just have one. It's a question. So did you come upon this topic because it's a passion of yours, or is it something that you just found online?
Yeah. So I've always loved animals. I feel like that's not common belief, but I've always found it because there's so many alternatives, and the ones I talked about have been discovered more recently. So I understand why animals were used in the past, but now for it now since they're infected. So, yeah, that's one of the reasons they don't really have a voice for them. Someone needs to advocate for them.
Great, thank you.
You mentioned how animal testing is sort of outdated, and I completely agree with you. Don't you think it puts companies to a disadvantage when they animal test, since most companies nowadays, like if I have like a makeup product or something, like it's very like highlighted that it was animal testing was not used. Like what is the appeal to companies like over other companies using it?
What is the appeal for
Like, why, because I personally believe that like so many companies don't animal test because like it's like a huge like obviously it's a really big thing that most people don't like. So like, why would companies still do it?
Honestly, the question I had when I was because I think it's that so many companies that highlight that in like a way. So I don't even. I think it's just the change. You don't want to put an effort into the testing process. Even though it wouldn't that much effort. I do agree with you. I think that obviously needs to be changed in a more effective to organic methods. So.
Thank you.
Yep.
I have a question. So you mentioned earlier that some of the symptoms or some of the products that they test the animals with are not even remotely similar to what the humans are tested on. So what were some of the like signs and symptoms, or like why did they do that if it wasn't even remotely similar to like how humans ended up reacting to the product? Do you know?
Yeah, so I think for the arthritis medication I was talking about before, I think it was either, the companies weren't aware that there'd be a difference between the species, even though it's kind of obvious because it's animals and we're humans and we'd obviously react to chemicals differently. I think that, there were the animal, like the monkeys with arthritis, they tested fine in the monkeys, but when they actually gave it to humans, a lot of the people died from it. So there's that aspect of difference in species that just needs to be addressed because it's not always going to be the same when testing chemicals on animals and then using them on humans. So I think it's just really reckless and dangerous to do that. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you. Good job.
Big question for you real quick. So I know that do you think it might be more effective to appeal to an international body for regulation? Because I know that laws on animal testing things are a lot more relaxed in countries like China than they are even in the United States. So what's stopping companies or other organizations from conducting testing there and then using that information or research or product in the United States or other Western countries?
Yeah, you're definitely right. Countries such as China, for sure, are definitely more lax with that, which is really sad. I think just as a base, because it needs so much work here. So, just appealing to Congress here and citizens in America, I think needs to be done first before going to any other countries. But you're absolutely right. They could definitely go overseas and test there for sure. But I think as a first step, Congress here needs to amend the Animal Welfare Act, and then we can go international.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions? Okay. Thanks so much for listening, guys.
Sorry. Is it my turn?
Go for it.
Okay. Hi, I'm Morellis, and today I'm going to be talking about, again, coral reefs. So the Coral Reef Conservation Act of 2000 was created with purpose to preserve, sustain, and restore the condition of coral reef ecosystems. However, the act is not doing enough to actively protect coral reefs. Coral reefs around the Earth are dying due to climate change. Climate change is caused by the trapping of greenhouse gases in the Earth's atmosphere. This leads to the average global temperature rising. A study by NASA shows that 16 out of 17 of the warmest years on record have occurred since 2001. Climate change doesn't only affect the Earth's atmosphere, it affects our oceans too. As the temperature of the atmosphere rises, so does the temperature of the ocean. According to the United States Environmental Protection Agency, ocean surface temperatures rose at an average rate of 0.13 degrees Fahrenheit per decade from 1901 to 2015. While this may not seem significant enough to cause a change in the reef, coral reefs will eject their symbiotic algae, causing them to turn white at even a slight constant temperature increase. This whitening of the reef is referred to as coral bleaching. As little as a 1 degree temperature increase can start this bleaching process. Bleaching causes the corals to slow their growth, which leads to an increased susceptibility increased susceptibility to disease, and can lead to large-scale die-off, according to National Geographic. As temperatures get higher, corals go from their natural earthy colors to neon and eventually turn bone white, a distinct sign of how unhealthy they are. According to Terry Hughes, the director of a Center for Coral Reef Studies at James Cook University in Australia, only 9% of the Great Barrier Reef, one of the biggest and most biodiverse reefs on Earth, has avoided bleaching since 1998. Furthermore, according to the World Resource Institute, more than 60% of the world's reefs are under threat from local stressors. This is troublesome as corals are invaluable for many reasons. Coral reefs are very biodiverse habitats, which means that many species of marine life call the corals their home. If species could not depend on the reef anymore for shelter or food, their populations could suffer. This could impact the food web of the ocean and could possibly lead to the endangerment or extinction of certain species. This would largely impact fisheries as well as the economy. Coral reefs in their healthy state are a common sightseeing destination. The death of coral reefs would represent a huge loss, as much as $375 billion annually for the local economies along the globe they support. Specifically, the Great Barrier Reef serves as a major tourist site for Australia, with more than 2 million people visiting the reef each year. The reef indirectly and directly supports approximately 69,000 jobs. Additionally, coral reefs serve as a buffer, protecting coastlines from the damaging effects of wave action and tropical storms. According to the National Ocean Surface, reefs play a large role in helping to prevent loss of life, property damage, and erosion. Another effect of climate change is an increase in the severity of storms such as hurricanes. As storms become more dangerous and powerful, the need for reefs in order to protect human life and property increases as well. Aside from serving as buffers, reefs also by providing a source of both food and medicine. Coral reef plants and animals are important sources of new medicines being developed to treat cancer, arthritis, Alzheimer's, heart disease, and other diseases. Additionally, around 6 million fishermen depend on the waters around coral reefs for their catches. It is estimated that reef fish provide protein for around 1 billion people. As the reefs die, they take potential medical advancements, sources, and jobs with them. In order to help protect Earth's corals, I am calling on the U.S. Congress to update the Coral Reef Conservation Act I was talking about earlier to institute marine protected areas in areas of the ocean where coral reefs can be found. A marine protected area is an area that has been reserved by legislation to protect part or all of the enclosed environment. While it is difficult to put a stop to the increasing ocean temperatures that are stressing the coral, we can work to stop the other stressors. To protect corals from these stressors, marine protected areas such as St. Lucia only allow diving, snorkeling, and glass bottom boats. Harmful practices to corals such as trawling, which breaks up corals, are not allowed. Reef surveys have shown that fish populations have tripled in size as well as doubled in average size in this protected area. If more marine protected areas are instituted in areas where coral reefs can be found, we can stop the damage that is being done to these important ecosystems and help preserve corals. Along with establishing marine protected areas around corals, the Act should also include funding for researching ways to bring corals back to health. For example, researchers at Southern Cross University have developed a way to begin restoration of coral reefs that have undergone bleaching. Peter Harrison, the project leader, describes their work as using the spawning of corals, collecting the eggs and sperm from the corals, and then growing the larvae and then putting millions of larvae back onto the reef to start the restoration process. This project is the first in the world to successfully manage a coral breeding population from larvae directly on the corals. Harrison hopes that the project will be successful enough for the reef to be able to produce enough larvae to dispense onto other reefs, allowing natural restoration to occur. Harrison says that ensuring a future for coral reefs ultimately requires urgent and rapid action to reduce global warming. We must heed Harrison's warning and work to ensure that we don't lose these beautiful ecosystems permanently. Does anybody have any questions?
I do have a more of a statement. I like how you focused on like the impact it has on people as far as it pertains to like storms, like hurricanes and jobs. Because I think if you put it in a way like that, it kind of scares people into listening and scares people into doing what they should be doing.
Thanks.
I just have a question. I liked how you're talking about the restoration project. Do you know like how much that cost? Was it like an expensive project for them to complete?
I'm not sure. The article I read didn't specifically talk about the financial side of it. They were just more talking about the good it can do. As I imagine, though, as like with any major new research, it probably is expensive. But I think that when it comes to the coral reefs and all the good that they do, that I think we shouldn't really be focusing on the financial situation about it, because the corals are in grave danger, and we really should be worrying more about action rather than money.
Thanks.
I have a question. So I like how you were talking about how the ocean is like a global initiative. Did you find any instances where other countries adopted a policy or initiative that you really liked and that you kind of wanted to model your policy after?
Well, Australia is very far ahead of us in trying to protect the corals, which may have probably has something to do with the fact that the Great Barrier Reef, like the biggest reef, is right off their coast. So Australia is a lot more environmentally cautious about things just as simple as sunblock, because certain sunblocks actually do harm corals when you go into the water with them. So they're pushing more for environmentally safe sunblock and just other initiatives like that. So I think in terms of just like on a smaller scale, Australia is doing a lot better than us, and we should work to kind of model our efforts after them.
All right, thank you. Good job.
For mine, like mine also had to do with ocean pollution. Like, and there's like a few like social media platforms or like hashtags like to get people to like be more involved. Like, there totally might not be, but like, is there anything like that like going on here that you know of?
Honest. I haven't seen much on social media, which I think that would start spreading how serious, because I definitely agree with that, and I don't think that a lot of people are aware as pollution what climate changes the corals.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Sure. Last question for you, I guess. So I understand you mentioned climate change is one of the key factors in the death of coral reefs today. But you also mentioned that focusing on other aspects of that, like pollution, also helps. Do you really think focusing on limiting pollution and coral reef damage is more important or more sustainable than trying to limit Earth temperatures to try and preserve coral reefs? Does that make sense?
Are you saying that? Are you saying that we should focus more on pollution rather than like the ocean temperatures rising?
Well, what I'm getting at is, do you think it's more important for us to focus on pollution and other vectors for coral reef damage than the overall problem of global temperatures? Because that's like a problem that's been creeping up for years now. That's more difficult to solve. But even with limiting pollution, if the temperature goes up, won't the corals die anyway?
Well, they're going to die. Pollution is one of the stressors that causes corals to die off, but it's really the increasing ocean temperatures and the activity around coral reefs, like people snorkeling and taking off pieces of the reef, or just boats trawling when they're using their nets to catch fish that are breaking up the reefs. Pollution is definitely one of the local stressors, but I was just focusing more on the example that I read, St. Lucis, that used the marine protected areas, and they've made their reefs have are so much more healthy now. So yeah, pollution, I guess I feel like just with pollution that we've been pushing that for so long and not much has changed. So I was just trying to go a different route, a different angle that might be helping the reefs.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
Any more questions? All right, thanks, guys.
All right, I guess we're down to me. Last one, guys. Yeah. Hey guys, my name's Nick Zilhaver, and today we're going to be talking about human germline editing. So imagine this, a family, completely normal. Got a mother, father, 2 children. But something's a little different, something's a little off. One of the children, he's different from the other ones. His face droops, he speaks strangely, he acts impulsively, and he's sort of distanced from all the other children. This child has trisomy 21, better known as Down syndrome. For the entirety of his shortened lifespan, he's going to face difficulty, educational obstacles, developmental difficulty, and facing the reality that he's going to be ostracized from other people for the remainder of his life. For years and years, this was a reality a number of people faced. But with modern tools, we can actually change this. So human germline editing is essentially the modification of this human genome before birth. A lot of people kind of think of it as editing people's genes to promote favorable alleles, so promoting favorable aspects of what a human can be. You could change eye color, for example. You could change how people look, and you can go into a lot of detail on this. But of course, there's a lot of positives and negatives associated with this concept. A lot of people automatically jump to the conclusion that human germline modification goes straight to designer babies, for example. Cretion et al.'s article, Germline Editing, an Editor's Cautionary, actually mentions a wide variety of those negatives, that people will essentially get to a point where they're able to spend money and change what their kids look like, how strong they are, how smart they are, how they look, and so on and so forth. So that's a huge negative, a huge drawback presented by this concept, this new and exciting technology. But on the contrary to that, it also has the potential to do a world of good for the human race. Think about all the diseases, all the genetic variability that results in so much suffering. You could exponentially improve quality of life for millions of people by promoting research into this tool. Think about some of the diseases: cystic fibrosis, Down syndrome, Huntington's disease, sickle cell anemia, and even cancer has a large genetic element that people don't realize, making them more susceptible to cancers in the future. At the moment, legislation in the United States is oriented towards almost exclusively blocking all research into this field. Mike Orcutt's article in the MIT Technology Review lists 2 of these main obstacles. One obstacle is FDA legislation preventing any approval for any medical technologies stemming from human germline editing. That's essentially the factor ensuring that we don't have any technologies that could either be therapeutic or against things like designer babies, for example, right? But the second thing and the most pressing issue is that currently written into the federal budget is a piece of legislation that disallows for any federal funding into any research at all on human germline editing. And that's a problem because a large amount of the national research budget comes straight from the federal government, not from private companies. And you see, the problem with going down this route is essentially you limit yourself. Sure, of course, designer babies are a massive problem that people are facing. You don't want to change the human race in that respect. It's an ethical and moral issue. It's a dilemma. But on the other hand, consider all the human suffering that's caused by ignorance towards this. I'm not necessarily arguing that we need to promote policy into pushing this tool forward. In fact, an article in the American Journal of Human Genetics actually states that the technology that we have right now, it's close, but it would be irresponsible to use it for medical procedures. I'm advocating that we need to promote policy for further research in order to learn more on this subject. If we can't learn more on this subject, how will we ever expect to progress as a race? Sure, of course, we have to consider the ethical and moral side of it, but of course, you also have to consider so many of the positives. And feigning ignorance towards it is not a way forward. it's important that we consider these things moving forward. We need to make sure that essentially we limit the direction that we head in with regards to medical testing. The technology is too early. It's too ethically murky. It's too dangerous. But it's important that we make sure we take the right steps forward into learning about new technologies. Because if we don't do that, we deny ourselves an opportunity to improve ourselves as a people, a culture, and a race. It is important that we change federal guidelines on how we conduct this research. All I'm asking is for legislators, Congress, the presidency, change the way that we promote the budget so that we can allow for further testing without necessarily advocating for clinical research. Let us learn more so we can improve ourselves on this problem. Does anybody have any questions for me? Let me open up the forum.
You said it was ethically murky. Was it very? I feel like this is like pretty controversial like topic. Was it pretty hard for you to find like information? Like I feel like it like on developing it further, or like are there a lot of people like agreeing with you that we need to research more on it?
Okay, I get what you mean. The main problem that we're sort of having we're looking at this from two perspectives. We're looking at it from a clinical perspective and an ethical perspective. So there's a number of articles that kind of delve into that ethical side of it. It's important that we make sure that we pay respect to that, if you kind of get what I'm saying. But you know, the main factor is that we have to learn more in order to understand these ethical concepts. You know, we're denying ourselves, you know, the light. We're denying ourselves even the ability to learn further in this. There's a number of testing that's been undergone that doesn't, you know, we edit human germline cells, but we don't necessarily implant them into, you know, to be born. You know, so we're learning more, but we're not necessarily going forward with the concept. And that's what it's all about, is that we promote our learning, but not necessarily going so far as to change ourselves. Does that kind of answer your question? All right, thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, I was.
No, you're good.
Okay, I have a question. So you were talking about how they could use the human germline editing to help prevent diseases from happening.
Right.
How and why do you think that this would be a better approach than, say, vaccinations or other measures that have been taken so far to prevent diseases?
Right, of course. Okay, now that's a good aspect too. There are some diseases that this obviously can't fix. Vaccines are more oriented towards viruses, bacteria, infections of that kind of nature. But there's a number of diseases that we already have that are essentially embedded in the genetic code that vaccines can't necessarily, because that works with the immune system. Vaccines don't necessarily promote the changing of the genetic code that you're born with, right? You know, trisomy 21 example. That's three copies of your 21st chromosome. No vaccine can fix that, but with the tools that we have right now, you can effectively change that defect, right? A vaccine can't do that, but we have the tools to change things that they can't. It just increases the number of options that we have for promoting public health.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question. Do you think it would be easier to get this policy change passed if it focused just on genetic diseases and didn't delve into like the designer babies like you talked about? Like if you just tailored it to say you can only study or learn about these genetic diseases through this testing?
Right, and that's exactly kind of where I'm going to. I'm not trying to promote any kind of clinical application. I don't want people to come up with new cures to diseases right now. The technology just isn't there. But what's important is that we kind of promote research into improving the tool itself, right? So that we kind of have a greater understanding of how it works and maybe potential applications in the future. And I think that's something everybody can get on board. You know, we're not really committing too many ethical violations. The research has already been conducted in this country to an extent before, you know, it's just limited by the current budgeting bill. So it's just important that we kind of delimit ourselves. We allow ourselves to go further in that field without stepping over the line.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
So I just have one question. So you're saying the research is kind of limited by budgeting right now.
Right.
But in your presentation, you kind of talked about how there's some ethical problems as well. So what do you think is the biggest like hindrance to seeing this policy change or being able to do research right now?
Okay, that's a good question. I think the biggest hindrance towards the policy change is essentially the fact that people have a misunderstanding of the direction that we're heading, or the policy that I'm asking for. People automatically assume that if we promote research into this area, that we're heading towards like a path that we can't reverse. That you're going to end up in a situation where in 10, 20 years time, you're going to have people selecting exactly what their kids are going to look like. And I mean, that's a fair, I guess, thought about it. But realistically, promoting research in this area doesn't necessarily do that. We already have a number of measures in place preventing clinical study towards it. Like I mentioned, the FDA already has has legislation preventing doing that. Exactly that. It's essentially that we're kind of learning about where we're going. That's all I'm asking. Is that we make sure that people have a greater understanding of what exactly we're asking, rather than looking too far ahead of what we're going towards right now.
Great, thank you.
All right, cool. Any other questions? All right, cool. Thanks.
Are we all good?
I think we're done.
Yeah.
Okay.